Good morning, everybody, and welcome to PSG of Mercer County. The Professional Service Group of Mercer County is a group that is here for you, anyone that is in any kind of career transition. And in addition, we wish you a happy Aloha Friday. You new folks visiting today, yes, I do wear Hawaiian shirts on purpose on Friday, and that's the purpose why I have that today. I wear and celebrate Aloha Friday. And in addition, today is National Vinyl Record Day. So some of you in the room, actually many of you, remember what a vinyl record is. It predated the CD, which of course predated digital. And a lot of audiophiles really prefer vinyl records to digital. They hear the difference. But today you can dive into your own collection or stop by right down the road is the Princeton Record Exchange and go take a look at some vinyl, maybe bring something old that's new home for you. So celebrate National Vinyl Record Day. So that's what we've got going on. PSG of Mercer County, of course, is here to help you by giving you resources you need to make your job search more efficient and more effective. And among those, we do have a LinkedIn group. So I do encourage you to join our LinkedIn group. If you are not yet on LinkedIn, of course, join LinkedIn. Join our LinkedIn group and then look for our group. It is PSG of Mercer County. And then you'll find on that page a join button or join group. Click that. We will put you in a on hold or pending mode, so don't worry about that. And the reason why is we don't accept just anybody in the group, we accept you, people that are serious and interested in job search. And the reason why we do that is we're just trying to keep the name collectors and the list collectors and the group collectors out of our group. Our group has over 1,700 members. They're all people that have been to one of our in-person or virtual meetings. So they kind of all get the idea of job search. And the benefit of that, of course, is if you ever need to reach out to anybody on LinkedIn and they are in our group, there's a good chance that if you reach out to someone in our group, they will get back to you because they understand job search and they kind of get it, the importance of being in touch with people. So do consider joining our LinkedIn group. In addition, we do have our website. Our website is psgofmercercounty.org. psgofmercercounty.org. It is more than just a landing page. It is over 120 web pages of content. There's a lot of information that's there. And so what you may want to do is take a look at our jobs page or open jobs page. It's kind of has two sections once you open it. One is there is a section that has a list of some postings that people put. That's a little out of date. The most recent one's a couple weeks old, but take a look as they get there. But also we have all 7 counties, Mercer and our 6 border counties are kind of our main service area. And when you click on that, for each one of the counties, you can drill down into different service areas, whether it's financial services or sciences or nonprofits. And when you click there, we list companies in that county in that kind of professional section. So if you go to Monmouth County and you click on that and then click on not-for-profits, the not-for-profits are there, and you click on those links, it's their career page. So it's not us maintaining a list of jobs, it's us maintaining a list of companies in the area. Now these could be national companies and national organizations as well, but because they do have a presence in that county, we list them and you go to their career pages. And by the way, what we did keep out were kind of the more local stores, unless they let us know, or the big chains that people know about. Nothing wrong with working at a big chain, but you know these we're not necessarily included. But among all 7 counties, we've got over 2,600 links to 2,600 company career pages. So it's a pretty big resource. So in just a moment, I will turn the microphone and controls here over to Mike, and Mike will proceed. Hopefully you're all seeing his slide deck right now. Just before I do that, I'm going to introduce PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome Mike Carr. Mike is a Senior Director of Global Service Operations with Dun & Bradstreet, where he leads a team of 13 professionals. When Mike landed at D&B in 2017, he made a commitment to give back to the job search community. Part of that commitment was the development of the original Advice from the Other Side of the Table presentation, which was first delivered February 2020. He's delivered that here, I think at least twice, and was inspired by the errors Mike made and had seen candidates make as he recruited for a number of open positions for his team. Having recently recruited 2 people to his team, Mike has updated his guidance to round 2, and that's what we're here for today, and delivers a startling conclusion that you will want to consider as part of your own job search plans as you seek to differentiate yourself in what remains a very competitive marketplace. Mike has extensive operations and finance experience gathered leading assignments in both the US and Europe. A native of Newcastle, England, he now resides in Ringgoes, which is near Flemington. So PSG of Mercer County is pleased to welcome back one of our alum, Mike Carr. Oh, applause, applause. Oh, yes. We hear applause very loud. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So good morning, everybody. I did not know it was National Vinyl Record Day, but I did just buy myself a new record player a month or so ago, and was gifted just the other day Bruce Hornsby and the Range, The Way It Is, which was the first album I bought when I came to the US back in 1986. So I can definitely subscribe to buying vinyl. So as David said, I am the Senior Director of Global Service Ops at Dun & Bradstreet. And I will say it's very nice to be back at the Princeton Public Library. I was a frequent visitor here during my period of transition. And as David said, I did present the first version of the original version of this material back in July of 2020. And this is the first run of this material, of this update of this material. So I'm going to be very interested in the feedback that we get and your reaction to this material as we go through this. I joined Dun & Bradstreet back in late 2017, and since then the team that I lead has grown from 5 to 13. So we've been hiring people both from inside and outside the company. And because of that hiring, I've made a study of the behavior of the people who've been hiring for roles on my team. And in 2020, I was sufficiently alarmed by what I was seeing of the candidates applying to join my team that I put together the original version of advice from the other side of the table, because I could clearly see that candidates applying for the roles on my team were not doing what I considered to be the basics. And so that was the original genesis of my first presentation. In the second quarter of this year, I was lucky enough to be able to recruit a further 2 positions. And in the time since that first original hiring spree, D&B had moved to a new recruiting platform, and that new platform gave me some really great additional insight into candidate behavior. And quite frankly, I was even more alarmed based on that, and so that's why I'm back with round 2. And that we should advance. And it was doing it before. Anyway, so in terms of what we'll cover this morning, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'll give you a couple of reasons why I think you should listen to what I've kind of uncovered. I'll give you a very brief recap of round 1, and then we'll get into some of the background around round 2, and more importantly, the data that goes behind round 2. We'll kind of from there migrate into a favorite subject of mine, which is cover letters. And thank you. I'll show you some real examples from my second quarter hiring sessions of how not to do it, and then give you one example of a possible approach. We'll talk about applying online, and then I'll hit you with some round 2 conclusions. We'll talk about what the answer might be, and then I'll invite you to connect with me. So anyway, about me. So I was laid off at the age of 57 after 35 years with my previous company, having served in a bunch of various finance and operational roles. If I look back with hindsight, you could say, you know, I stayed too long, but at the time it didn't feel like I had been with the same company, because I had obviously I had moved from the UK to the US. I'd actually moved over from the UK and actually moved back to the UK and then back again to the US. So I'd crossed the Atlantic a couple of times. I'd made the transition from finance into operations. So it didn't really feel like I'd been with the same company for 35 years, but with hindsight, I'd stayed there too long. I actually survived 6 changes of CEOs at this company, but the seventh change got me, and actually I should have seen it coming, because it was kind of I should have seen the signals. You know, in the summer, the president of our division was let go. At Christmas, the VP of my boss was let go, and then one Tuesday morning in February, my new boss, called me up to give me my bonus, and then in the same week, on the Thursday, she called me up to lay me off. And so after 35 years, I was unemployed, and I was terrified. You know, in that 35-year period, obviously I had done some job search, but never really very seriously. And so I was really starting from scratch, and I had an awful lot to learn. Now, you know, some people, when in that situation, decide, well, I'm going to kick around for a couple of months and not do anything. I couldn't be one of those people. I started looking for a role, you know, the day after I was let go. And after 400 plus applications and interviews with 60 plus different companies, I finally landed 21 months later. In the intervening time, I did some volunteer work with the Professional Service Group of Central New Jersey, which is just up the road in Somerville. I also, at one period of time, worked in an Amazon warehouse, because sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And we needed the benefits, because my wife is a 2-time ovarian cancer survivor, and as I said, we needed the benefits. But eventually, after 21 months, I was lucky enough to land at Dun & Bradstreet. Now, I landed through networking. A former colleague of mine at Unisys was laid off after me. He landed at D&B before me. Obviously, we stayed in touch, and one morning he called me up and said, they need you here. And he connected me with the individual who's now my boss. They had, as luck would have it, they had an opening, and the rest is kind of history. Luckily, I was a fit for the role, and you know, I've been there now for just a little bit over 4.5 years. So, you know, networking worked for me, but you know, what worked for me doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for you. You know, there is no, as you'll come to see later, there is no one answer. So, why should you spend your time listening to me? Well, consider these 2 things. So, you know, there are multiple places that you go, obviously week after week. There are lots and lots of very good speakers with lots and tons of good information that they can share with you. But how many of them have actually hired someone within the last couple of months? I've done that, so maybe I have some current experience to share with you. And also based on my recent experience and based on the data that I've collected with you, I think there are some things that you may need to consider in terms of your approach to job search. So I would hopefully encourage you to listen up. But before we go there, this is the only picture in my presentation. The rest is all words, but I love this picture for two reasons. First of all, this is one of my favorite places, not just in the United States, but in the entire world. So I'm going to ask you if you know first of all, where it is and what it is. But second of all, I use it as a metaphor for job search. So first of all, anyone in the room or on the phone know where this is? It is Half Dome in Yosemite. When the 49ers discovered Yosemite in the mid 1800s, they looked at Half Dome and they said it couldn't be climbed. Now, people not only climb Half Dome, they climb it with their bare hands. So the reason I use it as a metaphor for job searches, if you've recently lost, your position, you might be like one of those, early settlers sitting at the base of the valley, because Half Dome rises 5,000 feet from the base of the valley in Yosemite. And you might be looking up from the base of the valley thinking this job search thing is impossible, and there's no way that I can make this work. It's impossible. I'll never land. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. That you will land. All of us land. I landed at the age of 59 at Dun & Bradstreet. So it might look impossible today, but you will land. I just can't tell you when, and I can't tell you how. But what I can tell you, and this is something that someone very wise told me early on in my search, was that every day brings you one day closer, and that you should never ever give up. So if you grab onto nothing else, grab onto every day brings you one day closer, and never ever give up.
Because he tapped away from the screen.
There you go. So in my first version of this, I covered what I considered to be the basics. And what I saw from job seekers, folks applying for roles in my group, that people were not doing the basics. Very few people were applying for roles in my group, submitting cover letters, which were, and you'll see I'll get to this a little bit more later, which would help me to understand why they would be a fit for the role, and a fit in my organization. Their resumes were poor. They didn't have what you might know as Carrs. That they weren't peer reviewed. They didn't have bullets that were quantified. They were very general statements as opposed to examples of things that had been accomplished. I grew sales by X% over last year. Just very simple quantifiable statements. The resumes were poor. People weren't leveraging LinkedIn. If you go look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I tell you how to contact me. People weren't trying to contact me. They weren't leveraging LinkedIn to the fullest extent that they could. Research was poor. People were coming with few and in some cases no questions for me at interviews, and people just weren't sending thank you notes, which is a personal bugbear of mine. That continues to be an issue. But my punchline really was that I think you can use these basics to differentiate yourself between other candidates. And it was true then, and it's still true now, and people just weren't doing it. Anyway, if you want to see a recap of that, as I think David mentioned it, one of the things that they have at Mercer County is they have a YouTube channel with every single presentation on that channel. You can find mine there from July of 2020 if you want to see a recap of that presentation or any other presentation from this group. It's a tremendous resource. Anyway, moving to round two. My conclusion, and you probably won't like the sound of this, is that many job seekers are their own worst enemy. You probably don't like the sound of that, but I have the data to prove it. So in terms of background, service operations, and the way to think of service ops from a Dun & Bradstreet perspective is, in service ops, we're part of customer service at D&B. So and if you just think of it from a North America context, we have three contact centers that support customers in the US and Canada. Service ops is everything other than the customer-facing piece of those contact centers. So it's our responsibility to enable the agents to deliver service to our customers. So we enable the CRM, the telephony, the chat platform, the CSAT platform, the survey platform, the training, the running development, the reporting and analytics, the continuous improvement, the escalation management. We're all of that stuff kind of behind the curtain. That's service ops. Anyway, we were recruiting for two positions. One was a replacement for the reporting and analytics person who had been promoted, which was a really good thing. He got a director level position at Dun & Bradstreet, which is a great thing for him. Causes us some short-term pain, but you know, I'm very happy to live with that. And then the second was also a really cool thing. It was a newly created position. It was a newly created position for a knowledge management specialist. So those are the two positions we were going after. Now, as I mentioned, since the last hiring wave, Dun & Bradstreet had switched recruiting platforms and was now using this platform from a company called Lever, which up to this point I had never heard of, but they were a 2012 Bay Area startup. So this new system offered me as the hiring manager several advantages. So for the first time, me as the hiring manager, I could see every applicant as they were received by the system. So no applicant was being screened out by an ATS. So when I was in job search, I used to hear all the time about the ATS and how candidates were being screened out by the ATS before the recruiter or the hiring manager ever saw the resume. That is not the case in this situation. No one was getting screened out by an ATS. The big bad ATS is not happening in this situation. The other really cool thing about this system was that I could communicate real time with the recruiter within the app and could tell them my view of the candidate and whether or not I wanted to see the candidate, or tell the recruiter I have no interest in this candidate immediately. So from my perspective, this speeded up the recruitment process significantly. And just to give you a little bit of background about the recruitment process at Dun & Bradstreet, it's my responsibility to raise the rec. So for those two positions, I raised the requisition. Once the rec's approved, you immediately get assigned a recruiter, and then the recruiter has the responsibility to place the requisition both internally and on all of the job platforms and on the D&B website. And then the recruiter handles all of the communication with all of the candidates, all the way through to negotiating with the chosen candidate, negotiating salary and all of the other things that come with a job offer, which in a way, well, actually, I think is the right way of doing that, because that ensures that the relationship between me and the candidate is in no way harmed by those negotiations. This means our relationship gets off to a very positive start. Anyway, this new system gave me some tremendous insight into the candidates coming through for my two roles, gave me tremendous access to some data which previously I hadn't had access to. As a result of that, it gave me this. And I'm just going to pause a second to take a. So role 1 is the knowledge management position. Role 2 is the reporting and analytics position. So we had 50 applicants for the knowledge management position, 36 applicants for the analyst position, the reporting and analytics. I rejected 38 of the 50 knowledge management applicants immediately. I rejected 22 of the 36 analyst applicants immediately. Why did I do that? Because reading their resume, they simply were not a fit. I could tell from reading their resume, and because they gave me nothing else to go on, that they were not a fit. So I rejected them immediately. In the case of the knowledge management position, the other 12 were screened and either screened and rejected, or screened and made it through to first round interviews. The other 14, same story for the analyst position. We hired the knowledge management person in 6 weeks. We hired the Power BI reporting and analytics person in 9 weeks. So both roles were advertised internally and externally on all major job boards, including LinkedIn. So numerically, we got reasonable responses for both roles, but we weren't overwhelmed, right? 50 and 36, those are not huge numbers of responses. You know, you've heard in the past, you know, hundreds and hundreds of responses, right? 50 and 36 is not a huge number. It's actually very manageable. But for both roles, 2/3 of the applicants were immediately eliminated from contention because they simply were not a fit. However, if you were a strong fit, you had a great chance of getting an interview. So if you applied for a role that you were a strong fit, you had a great chance of being interviewed. The other thing is that the hiring cycles were pretty rapid. Now, the 6-week cycle on the knowledge management role was because we ended up hiring internally. So the 9 weeks is probably, the 9 weeks is slightly more extended than it would be normally, because we had to really search hard for the right reporting and analytics person. So 9 weeks is probably a little longer. 6 weeks is pretty short. The other thing, again, the advice from round 1 simply isn't being heeded. That the basics aren't being done. Cover letters are being done, but they're being done very badly, and I'm about to show you a couple of examples. Thank you notes, I've kind of given up on. I don't know why people don't send them, but they're not being done. It feels to me, a thank you note feels to me like a common courtesy. It feels to me like it's still a great opportunity to differentiate yourself. It still is. No one's sending them. It's not. I don't know why people aren't doing it, but they're not. So I'm going to pause there for a second and see if anybody has any questions, either in the room or in the chat, or anyone shocked by this.
Mike.
Hello, John.
Let me just be sure. Mike, let me just be sure. The people you hired did not send thank you letters.
They did not send thank you notes immediately after the interview.
Okay.
And yes, I violated one of my sort of principles because I still hired them.
Yeah. Thank you.
So just to give you an example on the knowledge management role, I had applicants from the following disciplines: order processing, career services, retail sales, supply chain and logistics, procurement, public records, compliance. I had a teacher and a budget analyst. I'm looking for a knowledge management specialist. None of those roles say knowledge management specialist to me. So none of them were qualified for the role based on the resume that they sent to me, and none of them took the time to explain why they thought they might be. So it made no sense for me to talk to them. So I didn't. I'm a big advocate for cover letters. It's an ongoing debate. The wind blows both ways. It's a whole. Does anybody read? My perspective is, if you're a job seeker, does it really matter if they don't? What have you got to lose? The fact of the matter is, I read them, and I still contend that they represent an excellent opportunity for you to differentiate yourself. If any one of those people had taken the time to write a cover letter that told me why that order processing person was also a knowledge management expert, I probably would have interviewed them. The fact of the matter is they didn't, and so they didn't get considered. The other question is, well, which format do I use? My perspective, it doesn't matter. It's much more important that it's well written and customized to the situation. And now I'm going to show you a couple of real examples that I received about why it's so important that it needs to be well written and customized to the situation. And I don't expect you probably aren't able to read that, so I'll read it for you. And the first thing to say about this individual, and I mean absolutely no disrespect when I show these, it's just I'm using them for illustrative purposes. This is a very smart person. This person has an MBA in marketing and a Bachelor of Science in Management Science. But the person says, I'm well known and well respected in the specialty pharmacy, pharmaceutical, and healthcare industry. Okay, well, that's not what D&B is. Dun & Bradstreet is a data company. So why am I interested in the fact that that's what you're a specialist in? He or she then goes on to say, I have over 10 years in the biotech, pharmaceutical, clinical trials, skilled in quality, risk management, deviations, audit findings, compliant handling, supported audits, good practice, working knowledge of FDA regulations, proficient in TrackWise, JIRA, professional work ethic, sound judgment, congenial, poised professional, and train and mentor new employees. The person is applying for a knowledge management specialist position and sends me that cover letter. This is not a customized cover letter. This is, I'm going to take the same cover letter I've sent for every other job, stick it on my resume, and send it to you. That's not what you do. That's not what you should do with a cover letter. You should customize it to the situation. How not to do it. Second example. I hope this application finds you happy and healthy. I'm an experienced program and customer success manager. Again, that's not what I'm looking for. I bring a comprehensive set of skills that I believe will be valuable to your company. In various roles at PetPlan, I've honed my abilities in leadership and analytics. Again, not what I'm looking for. Providing a firm foundation for this opportunity. Again, not what I'm looking for. My organization's people-centric nature and compassion have afforded my excellent management skills. I am excited to contribute my talents and proficiency in innovation toward your team efforts. Again, not what I'm looking for. again, this is a cut and paste cover letter, not at all customized to my role. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm preaching cover letters, but I'm telling you, don't send me a cut and paste cover letter and think that's what I'm telling you to do. That's not what I'm telling you to do. Okay, so what am I telling you to do? So I'll give you an example from when I was out. So you have to remember. So I worked for an IT company, several billion dollar company. I worked mostly in finance and operations. It wasn't unknown for me to go after roles that were not exactly what I was, what I had done previously. One of them was, and I should have blocked it out, but it was actually at Farbrook School, which some of you might know. It's not a million miles from here. It's actually up near Short Hills. They had a position for finance and operations, but Farbrook School is this tiny 200-child private school. But there was something about the position that actually intrigued me. And so I thought I would take a run at it. But I knew if I just sent my resume in to the head of school, I would have, I'd have no chance. I knew I had to build a bridge that would get her interested and get me the chance to be in front of her. So I wrote this cover letter. So I described where I found the opportunity. I described a little bit about, I talked about my kids and how my kids had this love of learning. One of my sons just got his PhD in astronomy. My other son was a theater major. And I kind of said I thought the Farbrook community would approve of that, this love of learning in my family. I tried to link my background to this. If you go and look at the Farbrook School, they really talk about this notion of traditions. So I linked my background to the traditions and the reputation and the financial future of the school. I have some pretty cool recommendations on LinkedIn that I urged her to take a look at. And I was completely honest. I said there's some things in the job description I've never done before. For example, facilities management. I've never done facilities management before, but I figured I could probably learn that. And I said, if you're as intrigued as I am, please contact me. There's some things about this that now I look at it several years later, I would probably do differently. She didn't respond to this letter. I had to send her 2 more. I have it, by the way, I have a 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. I try 3 times and then I stop. But on the third, so I followed up 2 times more, and I could tell they were having trouble filling the role. And I followed up twice to this original one with much shorter emails, and she eventually bit. And she invited me in for an interview. She then invited me back to talk to the board of trustees, and I didn't get the job. But I had created an opportunity where none really existed. It's one of the 60 companies that I talked to, and it was a really good experience. I'm really glad I did it, and the cover letter worked. But it worked because it was customized. It worked because it wasn't one of the other 2 that I showed you. Anyway, so if you're going to apply online, and you should, lots of people say applying online is a fool's errand. It's not. It shouldn't be the only thing you do, both of my jobs were posted online, and we filled one of the two from a candidate who applied online. So, roles are filled from jobs that are posted online. But if you're going to apply online, focus on the right roles. Target companies based on, industries that you're familiar with. Ideally target companies where you have contacts or where there's an opportunity for you to get referred in. For example, you now have a chance to be referred into Dun & Bradstreet by virtue of the fact that we now know each other. But if you don't have contacts, and if you're not an obvious fit, reach out to the hiring manager. You can find the hiring manager. Anybody who applied for a role, for one of my roles, could have found me easily. Or reach out to the recruiter, or reach out to any recruiter at the company and express interest, and that recruiter will put you in touch with whoever's driving the recruitment on that role. And if you think that's a weird idea, there was an article that was sent around from another job search group that I'm a member of still about a week ago. That was from two recruiters who specifically endorsed doing that. And minimally make the bridge that I'm talking about. Make the bridge. If you're not an obvious fit, make the bridge between what you are or what your resume says you are and what the role is that you're applying for. Because if you don't, you're gonna get rejected. So my round two conclusions. At least 2/3 of the applicants for my roles wasted my time and theirs applying for the positions. They were not a clear fit for the role, and they made no effort to build a bridge to make it clear for me how they might be a fit. So if you're struggling to get interviews, you should probably consider the possibility that you fall into the 66%. So if you're sitting there thinking, that's not me, then look to the left of you and look to the right of you, because those are the guys that are screwing up. And you're not being screened out by the ATS. It's not the ATS. You're being eliminated because you're not a fit. Now, don't take from this that I'm not suggesting you should never apply for a role where you're not an obvious fit. You should do that. I did it. But you've got to build that bridge for the hiring manager or the recruiter, or you will be knocked out. And I want to reiterate the lessons from round one, because they still have, the basics still count, and you still can differentiate yourself by following the basics. Now, if you've been hanging on waiting for the answer, I'm sorry to tell you there is no right answer. You need a balanced plan of attack. Online applications are one part of that. Networking is another. Networking worked for me. It can work for you, but it's only one piece of it. Online applications, networking, recruiters, mailing campaigns. There's a whole bunch of different things. You'll hear, by attending other groups and listening to other people, that they will give you other ideas, and you should listen to those. Because whilst one thing will work for me, something will work for someone else, and yet another thing will work for yet somebody else. So you should always be open to trying new things. But you need to focus. But remember that the basics really do count, and you always have to remember that every day brings you one day closer, and you should never, ever give up. Okay, as of August the 8th, I stopped counting. D&B has over 200 open roles, 40 of which are in the Short Hills and Centre Valley area, and over 30 of which are remote. So I encourage you to check us out. By the way, I'm not here as a representative of Dun & Bradstreet, but I am here because D&B encourages us to go out into the community and
Excuse me?
They encourage us to, they give us actually 2 days, in addition to our vacation, they give us 2 days of additional time off to go out into the community to do good. And that, I am using a half day of that to be here today. So, anyway, check out the website. If there are any roles in the Short Hills or Centre Valley area, or any of the remote roles that look like they make sense, reach out to me. I would be more than willing to refer you to any one of those roles. With that in mind, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. As David said at the top of this, when I landed, I made a commitment to myself and to the groups that I was a part of that I would give back to the job search community. So I've actually referred probably at least double-digit number of people into D&B for roles. None of them have actually been successful, but that, you know, that's by the by. You know, I'm more than willing to do that. If you just want to talk, if you want me to look at any of your paperwork, your resume, your cover letters, or anything, I'm very, very happy to do that. I've been where you're sitting. I know it sucks. Those 21 months were the worst time of my life. So I'm more than willing to help anyone who needs any help whatsoever. And with that, I will take questions.
So there is one question online from Alan. He wants to know, what are your strategies for finding a hiring manager?
Finding a hiring manager?
Yep. And Alan, if you'd like to unmute just to clarify, that's fine too.
Yeah, Mike, you were mentioning that it's easy to find hiring managers. I wanted to see if you could tell the audience some of your strategies, you know, when you were job searching to find hiring managers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I get what you mean. You can generally, you can often tell from the description in the role where the role fits within the organization, within the company. So so then I would go onto LinkedIn and just search for job titles that seem to fit that that role or that location. So, for example, there was a job for reporting into the executive director of Ann's Choice, which is a senior living location in Warrington, Pennsylvania. So I just put in executive director, Ann's Choice, Warrington, Pennsylvania. The guy popped up right away. And Ericsson, it was very easy to determine what Ericsson's email format was, and so I was able to write to him directly, and out of that, and explain why I thought, again, it was a role that I wasn't an exact fit for. So I applied for the role and then sent him an email, and within 2 days I had an interview. So it's, you know, in situations like that, I found it relatively easy to figure out who the hiring manager was, and And then you can kind of decode the email address and then write to them directly. It can be risky, but again, what do you have to lose? So it worked, and that approach worked several times for me. There's a question in the room.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
I'm also a Mike, so it'll be easy to remember each other's names.
All the best people are.
So we spent a little bit of time talking about the thank you note.
Yeah.
Email versus snail mail. What is good content associated with the thank you note? Is the thank you note the appropriate place? You go through the interview, and after the interview, you have time to think yourself what you did right, what you didn't do as well as effectively as you thought you should have done. Is the thank you note an appropriate place to try and correct some of the errors that you took that occurred during the in-person interview? And you may also think of something that you wished you had said during the interview, but didn't say during the interview. Is the thank you note an appropriate place for that also?
So first of all, I think, well, in terms of snail mail versus email, I think we're probably, today, we're probably more likely locked into email versus something handwritten. Although if the person is going into the office, there can be handwritten, especially if you have good penmanship, handwritten can be really effective. I don't know if you've ever seen Jimmy Fallon on the Tonight Show. He does thank you notes on Friday evenings. I actually have a pack of Jimmy Fallon thank you notes, and I have occasionally used those. They can be kind of cool, but to your point, I think it shouldn't be long. It should be something. It's an opportunity for you to express interest in the role, but it also is an opportunity. If you've made a mistake in the interview, it is an opportunity for you, in a concise way, to correct the mistake. And it is an opportunity for you to add something. If it's really critical, it is an opportunity for you to add something. But don't write a book. It should be very short. 1 or 2 paragraphs max. But ordinarily keep it very short. But if it's really important to correct a mistake, or if it's something critical that you've missed out, then I think it's okay to do that.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
There's one in the chat, David.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One second.
Hi, Mike. Gula.
I think we know each other.
I think we do. One of your main points really resonated with me, and that is building a bridge to the hiring manager. I think that I go back to something a professor once told me, is if you haven't written it, you haven't thought it. So in advance of sending your cover letter, I find that it's important to sit down and build a bridge for yourself. Why would I fit into this role? And then that becomes makes the cover letter easier. Just a comment.
Oh, no, totally. But I completely agree. I mean, the Farbrook School example that I gave, I thought about that for ages. In terms of should I or shouldn't I? And if I did, why would it make sense? And why should she listen? And that's how I built, that's how I built the letter, was why should she listen? And so no, you're absolutely right. You have to think it through yourself. Why does it make sense? And then write it. And once I'd done that, it actually came fairly quickly. But you're absolutely right. Any other thoughts? Oh,
Yep, so there's one online. It's from Gerard. Are hiring managers receptive to direct contact, or do they prefer one of the established application process? Nothing to lose trying, I would guess.
Is it feedback too hard?
yeah.
I'll just show. Are hiring managers receptive to direct contact? Or do they prefer one use the established application process?
So I guess that's a very personal thing. I can only speak for myself, and I totally was. I was totally open to being contacted directly. And in fact, and as I mentioned, I have my contact details in my LinkedIn profile, and wanted to be, almost expected to be contacted directly, and almost nobody did. In fact, in these two examples, nobody did. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Especially in a situation where you're not an obvious fit. If you're not an obvious fit and you don't do it, you're toast. And if you're uncomfortable reaching out to the hiring manager, then reach out to the recruiter. And as I said, I saw just a week ago an article from 2 recruiters that said they're very open. And when I say recruiters, I'm talking about in-house, so in my situation, recruiters at Dun & Bradstreet, they're very open to it. They want you to do it. Keep in mind, again, I used to hear, recruiters are the enemy. HR is the devil. Well, they're not. HR's sole interest, the recruiting team at Dun & Bradstreet, their number one interest is finding the right candidate to fill the role. That's all they want to do. So if you're a great candidate and you reach out to a recruiter, he's going to kiss you on the lips. He's going to welcome you. He wants you to reach out. All they want is great candidates. So why wouldn't you do it? And if you happen to reach out to the recruiter and you reach out to the wrong recruiter on, he's not handling that role, he's going to pass you off to the person who's handling that role. And then you're off to the races. And if you're a good candidate, they'll speak to you. And if you're not, then again, you've got nothing to lose. And they expect and want you to do it because they want the best person for the role. And that's their number one interest. That's their primary goal. And when I was doing round one, after running through the presentation a couple of times, I have a great relationship with a couple of recruiters at the DMV, and I sat down with them because I kept hearing, HR's the enemy. And I sat down and I asked them specifically, how do you respond to this notion of HR's the enemy? And that's where they came back and said, we're not the enemy. All we want to do is fill the role with the best candidate. So, other comments or questions?
Gerard, who asked the question, vote thanks.
Oh, okay. Okay. It could be like a former CEO at Unisys who used to say at all hands meetings when there were no questions, he used to say, "I'm very comfortable with silence," and he would just stand and wait. But if there are no further questions, I'm going to pass it back to David.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I usually like silence at night. Everybody's a little different. You know, I'm so appreciative, Mike, that you came back. You've presented to us before. From the other side of the hiring desk, it's a very insightful program. So I think, you know, getting a perspective from someone who's a hiring manager becomes very helpful for those of us that are, whether we want to go into being a hiring manager or a staff, getting that perspective. And so clearly very relevant for job seekers. Thank you very much. One thing I forgot to ask, can you make your slides available for us to post?
Yeah.
Okay, you did the last time. So I saw a few of you did take some snapshots, which was perfectly fine. A little later, he will send me the slide deck. We will post that on our website. Our website is psgofmercercounty.org. And in the upper right section, you'll see a link called Meeting Presentation Documents. In case that's not clear, this is a meeting, and those are the documents. That's why we've called it that. So you click there, there's a whole list from all the presenters that could share any of their documents with us this year. We are also recording this, so that is also available in the YouTube video. Also the chat log, which you don't see here, but people were participating. We're posting that with the questions and comments. Mike's contact information is in there. That will be in the meeting presentation documents as well. So a lot of information that we're able to provide to you. In addition, I want to let you know what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. And so next week, August 19th, wow, August is going quickly. Glenn Posh will be presenting. He's presented a number of times before. He is a social media and marketing expert with his own company. Does social media matter for the job search? That is his program. Spoiler alert, if you can't wait, yes, it matters. So that's what he's going to talk about. So social media, how you can leverage that in small, medium, or large ways. Just to let you know, next week we will only be virtual. We will not be meeting here at the library. So if you are on our emailing list, what you'll do is you'll get an email with the link, of course, and you can join us virtually as we've done continuously for 2.5 years. And for those of you who are visiting us here for the first time, if you have not yet done so, just ask, please just give us your name and email on the laptop in the back, and we will put you on our once-a-week emailing list with the connection information for each week's meeting. The following week, Valerie S. Williams will be back. Kickstart your job search, the essential checklist. So I'm so pleased Valerie will be back. It's a great program if you're getting into job search, or if you kind of staggered or stuck a little bit, then this is like a restart or a kick in the pants or something to really kind of level set and get yourself restarted. So it's a great program. She goes kind of start to finish of everything you need to kind of keep track of and do as steps in job search. And then also there are other presentations from other groups. You can certainly visit the Landing Expert website, landingexpert.com, landingexpert.com. There's a link for networking groups. And what you will find is you put in your zip code, which you don't really need to for virtual meetings, but you can. And all the networking groups in that list are there. And so you may find one of interest. Good idea in that list. Just contact the group, make sure they're still operating, or are they in person or virtual, because that gets updated about twice a year. It just may be a little bit out of date right now. It'll be mostly accurate, but some of the content. Also, there's another group called My Networking Central. It's a group started by several people, very supportive of job search. You do need to join it. It's completely free. Matter of fact, there's not even an additional improved model that you pay for, but your account then gives you access to networking groups, presenters. If you are a presenter, it will also give you connections to other presenters and group leaders, so that can be helpful as well. And also the Breakfast Club of New Jersey, which does typically meet in East Brunswick, but they're still running virtual. They were meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, thebreakfastclubnj.com, thebreakfastclubnj.com. And the presenter is Janelle Rosino. She's an IT recruiter, has her own boutique recruiting firm Moneyball salary negotiations. So that's what she'll be talking about tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, and that's free to join virtually. Also, our cousin organizations, PSG of Central New Jersey, Mike mentioned them a little earlier. They meet Mondays at 10:30, psgcnj.biz, and also PSG of Morris County, psgmc.org. They meet Wednesdays at 9:30 in the morning. So that's kind of what's going on. So as a reminder, we will be here virtually only next week, but back here in 2 weeks. Yes, Phil?
David, I wonder if Mike would mind if we brought him back for an encore? We have a question in chat.
Oh, okay. So one more question, and then when the session is over, we will stop the recording. And but we'll keep the online session. For those of you online, you can have your virtual discussion. People here can hang out as well. So back by popular demand.
Far away.
Mike, and if you would repeat it so people online can hear it.
Yep.
This is the question. I'm not sure I heard what the differentiators were for the candidates that Mike chose.
The differentiators in terms of why I hired them?
I think so. If you would like to unmute, Sharon,
Yes.
and answer your question.
Yes, why you chose those particular candidates?
So for the reporting and analytics person, we were looking for some very particular skills with regard to we use Power BI, for example, to do. That's the platform that we do most of our metrics on. So the person had to be very skilled in that platform. And so when we whittled it down from the 30 plus that applied, there were really only a handful of candidates that truly qualified. And I was lucky enough, if you remember, the individual that previously occupied the role stayed with D&B. So part of the interview process was actually an interview with the previous incumbent, and that included a technical test. So they were run through a technical test with Austin, the previous incumbent, and then obviously 2 rounds of interviews with me. So they had to be very technically proficient. So that narrowed the field down really then to three. And then what I do is part of my interview process. I use a process called targeted selection, and that process actually was something that was taught to me when I was recruiting for a large-scale implementation we were doing in Europe. And what you do there is you kind of decompose the job description down to like 4 or 5 critical components, and you structure your interview questions around those 4 or 5 components. And then at the end of the interview, you score the candidate on those 4 or 5 components, and then a couple of other things like like fit, not fit, but what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, you score them against those 4 or 5 components, and the theory is that the candidate who scores the highest should be the one that you end up hiring. So it puts a more scientific element to the hiring process as opposed to just kind of a gut feel, and that's kind of the way it played out. Certainly in the case of the Power BI analyst, he scored highest based on my targeted selection approach, and he also passed Austin's technical test, in the strongest. So that was kind of how we selected him, and he's actually worked out very well. And then on the knowledge management side, we got a similar process in terms of using targeted selection. We ended up going with an internal person who, again, we went through the same process, and he scored. He was at the top end of the targeted selection scoring. I wouldn't say he scored the absolute best, but There were some other circumstances at play internally, and that's how we landed on with him. But again, the approach to targeted selection process is the way that I run my hiring.
Thank you.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
And it served me extremely well. And as I said, it puts it adds an empirical element to what is otherwise just a gut feel.
Okay, thank you very much.
Make sense?
Yes.
All right, brilliant. Thank you.
And Mike will be here all week. So Mike, thanks once again for being such a big supporter of PSG of Mercer County and the other groups, and the commitment you've made to yourself to give back. That's just very special. So as a reminder, we will be presenting again, but only virtually next week. We'll be right back here in 2 weeks in hybrid. So we'll be here and streaming as well. You do look at our event calendar. If you are not yet getting our emails, the link is typically there. And if you are signed up on our emailing list, you'll get our weekly email. So until we get to see you all again very soon, either virtually or in person, we'll simply say bye, everybody.